my name is Terrace Ricks. I was here yesterday. I'm 21 years old. I work at the Reach Ashland Youth Center, and I am a youth leader and arts teacher there.
Buenos dias, everybody. My name is Marco Alberto. I'm 23 years old. I'm a teaching artist at Reach Ashland Youth Center, and I'm also a community organizer in Ashland.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Armando Davila. I'm 30 years old. I spent 8 years as a teaching artist, and I'm now working on various environmental activist issues.
So I wanted to, listening to Carl, he's amazing, like a genius, and I wanted to know if you guys had any initial thoughts, feelings about what's been said thus far before I get into like major questions.
I was very touched by this morning's program, almost to tears, not quite. And the statement that we're swimming in toxicity but reaching for the stars. I really appreciate that. I spent a lot of time among kind of like a progressive European American spirituality community, and there's very much this evolutionary spirituality, like we are the universe unfolding in real time. But I've never seen it put together with this racial piece. You know, we are black people fighting oppression as the universe, liberating humanity from a war with itself. You know, that kind of sentiment. And so, yeah, so I just appreciated that a lot.
Something that really resonated with me today was the idea that we need STEAM and not just STEM. And I was thinking about my younger cousin who just recently graduated from Oakland School of the Arts, and he's extremely talented artist, actor, graphic designer, and he chose to go the doctor route. And it's just something that I'm so proud of, because I think we, as much as we need artists, we also need doctors, and not just any doctors, but doctors who can bring in the arts. And I think that is something magical that we possess, is that, you know, it isn't just a practice, you know, and it does require discipline, and I'm so proud of him because he has discipline that I do not have. But it's that magicalness that you could, you know, you touch and you live your art, and it's not something where you don't have to be a practicing artist every day, but you could really live your art, and that could mean so many different things, but it's really up to us to live that out, and for the new generation to know that they don't have to fit into one box and, you know, only be doctors, but you can be an artist and be a doctor and do all of these things and be magical. So, thank you.
I agree with you about incorporating arts into all of the education curriculums. I think that helps students understand everything better visually, because everybody's not what am I trying to say? Oh, sorry. So more students are mainly visual learners that I have found, and being hands-on. So just learning whether it's science, math, English, I feel like they develop a more understanding and passion for it through the arts.
Yeah. Good job. So Carl talks about this new story. And so I was wondering, from y'all's perspective, what is the story of now? What is the new story? What is different about this movement that our generation is doing? And what things might be similar, but that we're standing on? So what's the story of now? What's the new story?
I'll go first since I have the mic in my hand. It feels like for me that the story that has been told has almost been like a myth, and when we kind of think about the civil rights movement or any movement of the past and the work that has been done, it almost feels like this myth that a fairy tale that almost seems kind of like, oh, well, you know, there was one or two chosen leaders and the rest of the people just kind of followed them. And I think this new story is going to involve everybody becoming their own leader. And I think just from having worked at the youth center, I think just observing the courage of the young people to really do the things on their own, and one of the things that really really, really resonated with me. One of my first experiences coming back to the Reach Ashland Youth Center was seeing a young person do a video blog for YouTube, and he's like, I have this YouTube channel, and I was like, okay, cool, and he had like 2 followers on it, and he nonetheless, didn't stop him or anything, and he was making his videos, and I was like, wow, like for me, I would be so hesitant to do that, afraid to well, if no one's watching, then should I even make this? Is it worth it? But I think that's really where it is that, even if it feels like no one's listening, we do have to speak our piece and scream it. And if it's just you screaming to yourself, that's what it takes. And so I really do think that it's going to be a movement of all of us, and it's not going to just have one face, but it's really all of us kind of learning to love our own faces and looking in the mirror and realizing like we are the ones we have the way we
I guess the news story for me right now is just being a Black woman and taking a lot as a Black woman, and then not being able to be angry because then I'm seen as an angry Black woman, and I cannot, I don't know, I guess the new movement for me is being enraged. And being told I was not allowed to be enraged, and trying to be nice, not kind, because there is a difference with being nice to people, but I want to learn how to be kind and kind to myself.
Yes.
Yeah. So not letting others abuse me, and then when I say something back, I'm not the mean
That's
one.
right. That's
No.
right.
But I'm being as a Black woman, I'm told that if I do that, I become the problem. So I'll be the problem.
So something I'm really severely concerned about is climate change. And California's on fire, drive up here is really smoky, and so there's various levels of concern. One level of concern is that we won't get on a survival path. The climate science is indeterminate, we're in the unknown, it's intensifying. And I'm not clear that we are made the commitment to survive the century, or beyond the century, or the next century. I haven't seen the comprehensive impulse to survive become a political platform, become a public engagement campaign, become curriculum. And then within that concern, if we are not going to survive, how are we going to go extinct? Can that be beautiful? Can that be with integrity? Can that be with dignity? And if we are somewhere in the middle of those two scenarios, of barely or somewhat surviving, class, gender, ability, race, these are all fragilities that will fracture and break us down further. It's like the last thing I want to see is Syria and their complex integration of climate-induced crop failures, and how that becomes a civil war because the politicians didn't manage the system right, various private interests competing to the point of breakdown. That's not what I want to live through. So for me, the news story is that it's not sustainable for humanity to be ceaselessly at war with itself. Our planetary, environmental, and economic constraints are also social, qualitative, kind of motivational constraints. We need to steer the line of altruistic and even kind of healthy, self-interested, but collaborative, inclusive motivations to get through this. And so the story is one in which humanity decides to thrive inclusively and beautifully.
God, that was so eloquent and amazing. So, it's a question for all the folks on stage right now, really, is that I really want to speak to and ask, why are you individually alive right now? So in your life, in your purpose, why are you here right now, at this time, in this century, in this generation, exactly where you are? What do you feel like that purpose is in moving folks forward and thinking about survival Yeah, where are you alive right now? And anybody can answer.
Carl?
You know, I think as I was growing up, I looked to older people to find a path for me. And I found myself in many situations where there was nobody there.
Mm-hmm.
That the path forward sometimes was really ignited by a knowledge or wisdom or oriented from some kind of past place. But also I was confronted with the reality that even as I am older now and taking a step into the indeterminate future, that I'm on my own. And I think the capacity of a generation of young people in the schools in Alameda, in the schools of California, people who will help us to understand how the climate crisis is igniting a new reality, a new vocabulary, and that we are, in a sense, trying to capture the spark that is going to actually transform our communities in a way that we won't recognize all of the elements that are in, and they're coming from many, many places. So I salute the role of teaching artists as a missing ingredient in that full pantheon of things that need to be learned in the future. And I think one of the people who talked about the importance of doctors, and I think that could be expanded to engineers and to mathematicians and all these people, those skills are necessary. But I think it also is necessary for us to understand what is our motivation as human beings, what is our relationship to the people around us, how can we find guidance in the signals that come to us from our everyday lives that actually give life meaning and give it a context. And this is the role, I think, of the artists to actually help to guide us in being able to identify those moments. So I salute the young people who are on the bridge to the transformation of our society, and I hope I will live to see a lot of it happen, but it's going to be requiring us to stand up to the challenges that face us all, and to rely on the strength that comes from the integrity that comes through our genes from the Big Bang 13.7 billion years ago, to the self-organizing structures of our planet Earth, to the people, the large numbers of people, most of whom are people of dark skin, who are going to become the dominant force in transformation at a global scale and also at a local scale. And the young people that we see now, the efforts that are going forward, will be illuminated by the work that they do together in support of our transformation of our human society, our recognition of the plants and animals and all that make up the Earth's abundance, but also the relationships that exist with our human community and how it can be transformed into the present and future. So I salute you all, and I really appreciate that very much.
Anyone else want to answer?
I'll give it a try. It seems to me that even though at the opening I spoke about this generational sort of, I guess, really a little bit of despair to think that some of the things that my father experienced as a young man, they may have changed form, they may look a little different, but they're no less hurtful and wounding. And I think where I see a little bit of a bright light is that I think each generation, the response has actually become a healthier response. So that certainly, you know, my 12-year-old granddaughter's consciousness about what she's experiencing is not to internalize it as something wrong with her, but really to be very clear that there's something wrong with those other people, and that they need to, to really step back and rethink. And that really becomes an issue of how we are with each other, the sorts of relationships and connections that we create and that we nurture. And it's like in any living system, those connections are vital. It's like our oxygen, and when we don't have that, we suffer all of the things that we would suffer if physically we were deprived of oxygen. We hallucinate. We eventually die if we don't make those connections. So I think that's something that I see much more evident in younger generations, that they're much more open to those connections and those relationships, and to reaching out beyond their own immediate physical neighborhood. They're more global people. They're able to negotiate a world that's so different in probably a much healthier way than we have.
Also, we're going to take a few minutes to probably take like 1 or 2 questions from the audience. If you have enough time, but like any of the younger folks.
I'll be really brief. I feel passionate about the intersection between justice and awakening, and want to spend a fair amount of my time at some point translating the Buddhist Dharma into an awakening path for a collective scale, because in my understanding the curriculum is more or less the same. How does suffering arise? How does it end? What is the methodology? And I feel like, reconciling the acute manifestation of abuse in society scale is good, but we also should permanently leave it behind. And so the structural predilections to abuse each other, personally, interpersonally, and collectively, have deep roots in the human psyche, which I believe can be pretty solidly uprooted.
I'll try to answer this quickly too. I think it is very fitting that we're having this intergenerational conversation. I think our purpose and the reason why we are here on Earth has very much a intergenerational meaning, and I do think that we carry the purpose of our ancestors and their dreams that they had, and I think we are put here on this earth to kind of carry that out. My grandfather migrated here from El Salvador with a student art visa, and was never able to really, until he retired, able to practice his art. My father migrated here from El Salvador because of the Civil War, seeking refugee, and when he was on the train in Mexico, he was traveling with a friend, and police came onto the train looking for Central American migrants, and my father pretended to be asleep, and they didn't bother him, and he somehow kind of just snuck through and didn't get bothered. And I think he actually did fall asleep, and so when he woke up, he kind of looked around and realized that his friend was gone. And to this day, he's never heard or seen from that friend again. So I do think there's things that are like so divine, and I think the reason why we are alive is so divine. Just the universe is so grand, and so make no mistake, we are here for a reason. It is a very divine reason. Today, I wasn't sure if I was even going to be able to make it to this conversation, and thank God I did. And I ran into one of my oldest friends, Sadie Washington, who I haven't seen since middle school. And so there's things that are just so divine in the universe that really, when I think about the question why am I alive, I think about it, but then I also just it's something that I can't ponder on for too long, because I just look at the divinity around me and just realize that we're part of something that's so inexplicably amazing that you just have to enjoy it and live it with the most love. Just live it with love, yeah.
I was talking to somebody about this earlier, about what I do, and I was saying how, I'm here, I feel like just to help with others, opportunities just, come my way, and I feel as I am who I am, to be who I am, and in their space, and to help them out as much as I can. I wasn't planning to do any of this in my life. It wasn't in my vision to be here, but the opportunity came to me, and I guess it it was for me.
So I have 5 minutes, so does anyone have any burning questions? Of course, Chip, of course. We expect nothing less. Yes, Chip.
Well, I'm really, really profoundly concerned about the planet, like everybody else. And I'm really interested in the intersection between the arts, social justice, and ecological consciousness. The undergirder being self-awareness. I mean, the toxicity that I think is spoken of is in our societies, it's in our relationships, and it's manifest in the way we treat this planet. And I think it is an intergenerational issue. I think it is the issue of our times. I think what we take for granted among us, between us, and in the spaces we inhabit is passing. We must take care of each other, and we must take care of this planet. So just speaking to the intersection of art, social justice, and ecological consciousness, I just wondered how that sits with our young people and Carl today.
Nice.
And Ms. Francisca.
I low-key want to answer for a quick second. I was supposed to be talking anyway, but you know what I'm saying? Y'all are so amazing. There's this book called The Emergent Strategy. And if you haven't read it, read it. I'm not done reading it, but my life has already been transformed. So what this author does is talk about those exact intersections. And one of the beautiful things that I've read so far is called the Emergent Strategy. Emergent, not immersion, emergent strategy. And one of the beautiful things that this author says is that there are these large mammals like lions, tigers, and bears, and they're beautiful and amazing, and we see them in zoos, and we praise them. However, they're dying. Yep. They're going extinct. But if we look at the little things, the mushrooms, the bacteria, they're able to survive in almost any environment. And they have such an interconnectedness, similar to what the young man from yesterday was talking about, is that, when you put plants together, they heal better together. They can combat the toxic environment together. And so I would say those kind of answers, definitely in that book, The Emergent Strategy, and also that when we think about the earth, it's not something separate. It is a living being. It exists, it is alive, it moves, it talks. It tells us things, it has answers. I don't know if you've ever you got so much going on in your life, and you sip some tea and you go outside and you're like, I can see clearly now the rain is gone. You know what I'm saying? It's like, the earth can do that. And so I definitely agree with you that we have to take care of each other, and it is in so many different ways. I was thinking about, we have been talking about white folks. I'm sorry, we have been talking about white folks. And so I'm like, white people love to pick up trash bar, and they haven't talked about racism in their family. If all you're doing is you're taking care of the planet Earth, but not the people on it.
Yeah.
That's right.
What's the point? You'll have a beautiful Earth with no culture. What good is that? So, yes, I agree. Anybody else want to try to tackle that question?
I would just like to point out also that we have been raised to believe that ecological consciousness is something separate over here with a discipline over here, and that arts is yet a separate thing, and that our experience of racism growing up is still a different discipline, and don't confuse them all. But actually the wisdom that comes down from many of our traditions, from the Native Americans, from Mexicans, from African Americans, from original people, from the Celts, all these different people, from the Asians and Pacific Islanders, the traditional wisdom has always been to really integrate ecological consciousness with our survival. That's also really interpreted us through the wisdom and the magic of our being able to deal with the narratives that explain our existence and our sense of future. So I think that what we're seeing is that those disciplines are coming together again.
Thank you so much. That concludes our time.